No.
All right, we are live. We're live. Welcome to Bacon Bits. We have very special guest Mark Kern on today, along with the usual suspects, Daddy Warpig, and the illustrious Professor Nick, who does not have his bowling hat on today. I'll tell you in advance, I already got rid of
There
Stark.
it is.
Bowling hat.
Stark the show dog has been tied out, so there's no chance we'll be interrupted there. So, Mark, welcome to Bacon Bits. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you. It's good to be here. How much bacon do I get?
You get, all the bacon that you can possibly eat. We already have twice the usual number of viewers, so. I got to tell you, it's a little bit hurtful that I try to get guests on this show, and I try, and very rarely do I get a big name guest. But Professor tweets one time, and we get Grums. Warpig brings out a published author last week, and I'm like sitting under the bridge here asking the hobos to come on the show. I can't get anybody on.
No, you got Ash, remember?
I think that was because of you. I did tweet at Brad Worrell there, and I got no response out of him.
Well, I only did it for the bacon. I'm on a Bacon of the Month club. I love the stuff. So, yeah.
I had Adam Baldwin on the show, and I think we had 12 people show up. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
So, Mark, before we get into it, let me just tell you a little bit about I wrote a confession right off the bat. I never actually played World of Warcraft.
What?
Okay.
I
Yeah.
never did. I have to be honest. It came out at a time when I was a little, I guess you'd call it subscription weary, and you know how people get when they have, cell phones and
Basically,
internet.
when you were younger, you had a sex life.
Well, yes, exactly. That's
You're forgiven.
Is that going to be your William Shatner moment where he told the fans to get a life?
Sometimes I get questions about, do you remember in this one zone in the corner where this is totally one of these Star Trek.
Finally, the show's going to be famous for something. Today, Mark Kern made enemies on the show. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about how I first saw the game because I think it's pretty neat. I mean, you as someone who works on these things, it must be cool to get a few of these stories every now and then about how people fall in love with your product, right, with your work.
Yeah, I mean, I to be honest, it never gets old. It keeps me going. It really makes me want to make more games, and I'm getting the itch again. So yeah, let's hear it.
All right, fantastic. Well, I used to all through college. Okay, I was a bartender and a waiter, and I worked with a couple of people. I'm going to try to make this as short as possible. Worked with a couple of people, guy and a girl. They weren't into games all that much or at all, and they wound up dating. I didn't see them for years afterwards, and then one day I bumped into them, and they said, "Hey, why don't you come back to our house and have a couple of beers and we'll catch up?" So I said, "Yeah, okay, fine." Now, mind you, they weren't really nerds. I mean, they weren't really into that kind of stuff at all. So I walk into their apartment, and their kitchen table is completely obliterated with computers. They each have their own desktop computer and large monitor. They each have their own keyboard and mouse. There's empty wine bottles all over the middle of it. And I say, what is going on here? Did you guys join NASA after you left the restaurant, or what happened? They say, "Oh, no, this is where I play World of Warcraft, and Heather sits next to me, and this is where she plays World of Warcraft." So they
That's
sort of
awesome.
bonded over that. And that's the first time I actually saw the game, but they pretty much let it take over their entire kitchen for a year.
Whoa.
And now they're married.
Is a good sign.
Yeah, the wine bottles are a good sign. That's what got me there. Now they're married, so I think that's probably your fault.
Well, if you can't work together online and take down a raid boss together, I mean, it's probably not going to work, right? So it's a good time.
It's probably not going to work. Okay, let's just go right out there with the Polygon video, because I know everyone wants to hear about it. The most DMs I've gotten were about about this video. So
We have to have Mark give his bio for those people, for those one or two viewers who don't know who he is.
Oh, all right. So, gee, yeah, I was. This is. I hate giving. It's like, where do I start? Once upon a time. No, so I got into games pretty early on. I've been making games ever since high school. I was hacking on my Apple II. Later on, I started making games in college for part time. All the way through law school, I was working. I did my first game for Interplay called Star Reach. Then I worked with Naughty Dogs back before Andy and Jason were just working out of their apartment out of MIT. And they were doing a 3DO game, and they just sold to Universal for Crash Bandicoot, and they were all excited. And then I said, well, this game stuff sounds a lot more fun than law school, which I was doing at the time, and I graduated from it. And what happened was I went right into games foolishly during the .com era where nobody wanted to fund games, and and I was like, hey, let's do this top-down, shooter called Crixa. And it just so happens that I'm making a tabletop game called Crixa now, which is kind of like the spiritual successor to that very first game I made. But that's when I met some people in the industry like Bungie and Blizzard and some of the original people, like Alan Adham, the founder of Blizzard, along with Mike Morheim and Frank Pierce, and I met Alex Seropian, one of the founders of Bungie, and Bungie was really hot on doing this game, and it was a little simple arcade shooter. Everybody wanted to do something simple at the time, and I remember we were about to sign a term sheet with Bungie. And Bill Roper called up from Blizzard, and I said, "Well, Bill, gee, that's really nice, but we're about to sign with Bungie." And he looked at me over the phone. I could just feel his eyes, and he said, "We'll kick the shit out of any offer Bungie has to offer. Come forward." And they did. I went and saw them, and we signed that deal. And unfortunately, it didn't work out because this game called Diablo came along and sucked up all their time. And they're like, we don't want to do little games anymore. We only want to do AAA games. This was the moment where they decided Blizzard was only going to do AAA games. But they liked the whole team, and they wanted to hire all 7 of us. I'm the only guy that decided to take the offer to go over. I moved out to California, and kind of the rest is history. Worked on a bunch of titles. StarCraft Brood War, producers at Blizzard for a while, and then this project, then I was on Diablo 2 as strike team lead and Blizzard HQ producer, and then WoW came along, and WoW was kind of in trouble, and people were, it was the black sheep of the whole company. Nobody thought it would ever succeed or do well, and people had tons of complaints about it. So unfortunately, at that time, a couple of the top guys left. The team lead for WoW left. The CTO of Blizzard left, and they all went to found ArenaNet to do Guild Wars, and they were going to cancel the project. And they said, we just can't continue. And I said, what if I step down as manager of product development, and I devote myself to this one product because I believe in it so much? And they said, it'll never happen. We don't have a lead programmer anymore. How are you going to do this? It's like, I will get you a lead programmer. I'll get you someone out of id. I'll get John Cash. He wrote the networking layer for Quake. He knows how to do multiplayer games. Let me do this and save the game, because I really believe we should do this. And they were set to cancel it. They were just going to scrap the whole thing. And they said, okay, if you can do all that and come onto the team, maybe we'll let it survive. So I worked my butt off to recruit John out of id. I remember I had to look for houses for his wife and stuff, and she was very particular. She's like, I've been forced to move 3 times, and I've built my dream house 3 times. I'm not moving again unless it's the perfect house. And so I spent countless weekends house shopping, brochures and everything else. And then John and I both had BMW M3s, and we were big fans, and so we're talking about that. And finally got him on board, got the wife happy, and then boom, we were saved. Now we had World of Warcraft. We just had to actually deliver it and not be sort of the black sheep anymore. And so we had to do a lot of work there. Anyways, that's a really long story to get to a point, I guess. But yeah, I've done a lot. over the years with games, and you know, after I did WoW, I was kind of burnt out. 6 months later, you know, I handed in my letter of resignation. I said, I'm tired, I'm burnt out, I want to go home, and I thought I would never do games. But sure enough, after sleeping for 3 months, 6 months later, the itch hit me again, and I started Red 5 Studios to do Firefall, a different type of MMO, an open world shooter MMO, and I eventually sold that company to the Nine, and afterwards there's, you know, the whole brouhaha of me stepping down because we had a very big creative difference on the team. They wanted to make WoW with guns, and I wanted to make an open world shooter, and you know, and well, let's just say that push came to shove. I stepped down. From CEO. And then subsequently resigned after that. And then, well, you know, they changed the game, and now you don't know about it because it didn't work. That's my career so far. And then I said, you know what? I've had it with investors that want WoW and me to only make WoW from now on. I'm just going to do my own stuff. So I started Tabletop. I revitalized my Crix IP, the very first game that I started working on as my own, and doing it as a tabletop now, and quite happy doing that. And I think I want to stay, you know, like a couple-person design shop just for a while here and enjoy that, because you get to a point where it's 150-person teams, and it's kind of sucks the joy out of it.
So tell us a little bit about that tabletop game.
Is everyone still there?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not hearing anybody else. Warpig, are you there?
I'm still here.
All right. Maybe it's Mark that we can't hear.
Oh, I'm back. I guess I dropped.
I don't know what happened.
I see 2 Marks now.
I took too long, didn't I? You got the hook and you pulled me off stage. Is that what happened?
I don't know what happened. Now you're showing up 2 or 3 times. Google Hangouts, Mark, should be your next job. Fix this crap, will you? Because there's an issue every week. So listen, I'm a little curious, Mark. What was the internal? You said that they wanted to kill WoW. They didn't have any faith in it. What were the objections to it? Was it because it was subscription based and they were nervous about that?
No, it was. We were kind of like there were only about 10 people on the team, and the team had been going, you know, prior to me joining with a former team lead, Jeff Strain, who's the founder of ArenaNet, and they were having issues because you know, they couldn't match the art style because we were going at that time for something much more realistic and less cartoony than WoW, and so there were a lot of complaints that we weren't getting the Warcraft aesthetic. Then the milestones that were shown, there was so much in software development. You can kind of get, you know, we have this. You can get in this mode that's called gold plating a prototype, where you do so much work on the prototype that you're actually not building an actual game architecture underneath it. So what was happening was we would have these company-wide presentations, and the team was spending so much time gold plating a prototype without any real code underneath that was shippable, that would just have to be scrapped and rewritten for every presentation, that not a lot of progress was being made, and people sensed that. Sure, the visuals were there, it all looked good, but there was nothing really. I mean, we didn't even have multiplayer working at the time. So I said, screw that, we're going to learn the art style, we're going to show, you know, Metzen and Samwise that we can walk the walk and talk the talk, and you know, once we earn their trust that we can deliver on the Warcraft art style, then we're free to extrapolate after that, because they'll give us a lot more freedom if we can just show that we can do what they want us to do. And then, you know, that was one of the issues. Another issue was when I finally came on the team, I said, no more gold plating prototypes. We're only going to show what we have. I don't care if it's just a chat box that works. And literally, we went from these gorgeous art demos that didn't really show a lot of, you know, real progress in the game, except being a pretty demo. And as devs, you can smell that out, right? So when you're, it's not quite the gaming public. You get a lot of hard questions. And so literally, our first milestone was like 2 people that were able to run around on a flat plane of grass with a chat box. And I said, we're not going to show anything that isn't real. And we kind of got the project back on track that way. But we had to earn a lot of trust within Blizzard, especially since, Jeff Strain left and he was a real heavy hitter, and they're like, you don't have a senior programmer. So, having to recruit John Cash on board and getting all that up and running. And to this day, my prize for all this was that Alan Adam, one of the founders, was going to buy me dinner, and he hasn't bought me dinner yet. He did leave the company the year before WoW shipped, but a brilliant designer, by the way. Absolutely, he did a lot of the real design work on Vanilla WoW, and he never likes publicity or anything, but deserves a lot of credit for it. But that's kind of how that whole process played out, and it was tough. We were the black sheep team of the whole company, and the project was literally going to be canceled. And I said, I'll do it. I'll do what it takes with this team to help fix it and get it back on track. And we did. And the whole team worked really hard, and they did an amazing job, and we were able to prove ourselves. But even then, there was a question of, will it ever make enough money?
Now, is it true, Mark, that you're going to come back on the show live and do a cooking demonstration from the recent released World of Warcraft cookbook?
I saw that book. And I think, we talked on the show a little bit earlier about all the drinking recipes. I don't know if I'll cook, but I'll drink. I'll mix up some grog.
All right, we are going to have an all-drinking episode of Bacon Bits.
Yeah.
We're all going to drink grog and see what happens. That's right. And we're still going to play Doom, even drunk, better than Polygon.
Oh, there you go. Take the Polygon challenge on some WoW meat.
I have to. I do feel like we have to do that. Professor, I know that you worked up a couple of great questions for Mark, so now it's probably a good time to take your shot.
Okay, so my first question for Mark is...
Yes.
And this is a very serious question. I think everyone on the internet wants to know this. And the question is, should there be hair and eye color on Chinese driver's licenses?
What? Did I miss a recent event? What?
No, I'm kidding.
There should. I'm half Chinese. There should not be Chinese driver's license.
Well, all right, that's the best answer.
So I do a lot of business in Shanghai, and the first time I went there scared the crap out of me because literally traffic lights are a suggestion there. And pedestrians are fearless. You'd think that with cars driving up on sidewalks as a regular thing and squeezing down narrow alleyways, that the pedestrians would be, pretty cautious about these crazy drivers out there. But they are as aggressive as the cars. They will get in the car's way and fight for right of way, and it's just I'm just impressed with the ferocity and to talk about bravery. There you go. That's some bravery there. And somehow nobody gets hurt through this whole thing. I mean, speeding down alleyways, sidewalks, pedestrians jumping in front of you. It all just sort of works. It's like a school of fish, and they all just sort of sense each other and maneuver around each other.
I think we have asked that question of every guest, and that's probably the best answer we've gotten.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
That's all from Big Trouble in Little China. I can't believe that, Mark, you haven't seen that movie.
I have. Where's the line in that? Oh, the girl with green eyes? What are we talking about? One of my favorite movies. I had such a crush on Kim Cattrall then. Oh, man.
Everyone did.
Yeah.
Wow. I think everyone did.
Everyone did. Mm-hmm. Her and the girl that went to CSI, Elizabeth Shue.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Shue.
Yeah, those were both my 80s crushes.
Wait, no, I have a real question for Mark.
Yeah, go.
What can game companies do to fight all this political correctness that's going on nowadays?
Well, I think we've all learned, because I mean we've been fighting this stuff for well over a year, and some of you guys even longer. The best defense is to just say no, you're wrong. There's all this deference paid to anybody who makes an accusation that you're not being politically correct. There's this immediate fear that it will tank your business, or or something horrible will happen if you don't immediately cave. And I think we've seen that. You can give a very reasonable, logical response and say, no, you're wrong, and this is what we're doing, and in fact, we really do benefit, whatever cause it is that you think we're hurting, and it doesn't stick. I mean, as long as you're not really being an asshole, if the accusation is false and trite, shrug it off, acknowledge it, say, yeah, I hear you, but you're wrong. This is what we're doing. And I think it works to your benefit. I mean, I often say that in games, there's no measured impact of any of this PC culture outrage on negative sales of games. In fact, we have the opposite, where if companies stand up to false accusations or overly broad dramatizations of faux outrage, that their sales actually increase, that customers get behind them because they feel they're more real. And I think that's a trend with gaming companies in general. Now that we can go direct to consumers and we're interacting with them directly on social media, the more real you are, warts and all, I think that the more customers actually end up trusting you.
Yeah, I agree. But why do you think that game companies are more susceptible than, say, the music industry to these SJW demands?
Well, some are and some aren't, right? But I think that if you're a fairly large public company, that makes it harder. I think that you are a decision maker for one product. Let's say you're the brand manager, and you're not high up on the food chain. I mean, it might be a big franchise, but there's still like 6 layers of management above you, each of whom could fire you, right? So it's very hard to take that sort of stance with any single product, and it's very hard to elevate that type of outrage up to someone who can make that call for the entire company.
So, just as a quick follow-up, Mark, do you think it's odd that the tech segment in general has been seemingly taken over by SJWs in terms of their management and ownership? It almost seems to me like the tech industry is Hollywood light these days. And is there a reason for that, or did you see this trend coming 15 years ago?
I didn't see it coming. I mean, we've always had a liberal bent in tech. I was liberal. Now I'm more libertarian, leftist leaning, and sometimes extreme right. Every one day, random moment. It's like using time to pick your politics. I think there's just a desire to improve the world in general in tech, and I think we're susceptible to that. Even as early as when I was first starting out in games with this first game company, I remember deliberately going out and trying to hire women engineers. I'd go to MIT. I was in Boston. I was stapling up flyers and stuff. And there was so much stigma about games. Not that it was a bad place for women to work, but because games were for kids, or games were not technically challenging, or games were not a true career, that I couldn't get any interest, and I tried really hard. And even during Blizzard, I tried hard, and I hired some of the first female developers at Blizzard. So I think we've always had that desire. We want to see this stuff happen, right? So I think, we are susceptible to progressive ideas because we all love Star Trek. We all want to make Star Trek. And these were all ideals we grew up with. The problem is that I think we've gone a little blind in our pursuit of it. It's now at all costs. It's now, it's now blown out of proportion. So I think, maybe we're just more susceptible to that in general. Trying to be, because a lot of people in tech are trying to reinvent the world, right? And this seems to be a very popular bandwagon to jump on, or was. Until recently. Recently, there's a pushback and everything else, and that's interesting to me.
I'll tell you why it surprises me a little bit. Is because I've always had a theory, just a loose theory in the back of my head, that Hollywood always leaned left because they dealt in the business of emotions, and that they always had good intentions. I never felt that they were bad people, like DiCaprio and even the hard-wing leftists. I always thought that they were emotionally driven people in an emotionally driven business, and it just sort of made sense to me that they went, very left, and that they had good intentions but maybe illogical solutions. But the tech industry, I always thought, was comprised of very logical people. Programmers, developers, designers. I always thought that was a logical sect of people, and so it surprises me a little bit to see them so emotional and so adherent to the SJW standards. It just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, do you know what I mean by that?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think what you're saying is that if you examine a lot of the hyperbole logically, as a lot of people in tech are trained to do, it doesn't hold up. And I can give you one explanation that's probably going to give me a lot of flack, but I've been on a dev team where it was explained to me that the guys would really like me to tone down my positions because the wives were harping on them and the significant others were harping on it. I don't know if that's true. I did not witness it firsthand. But another explanation I've heard is that a lot of engineers, they just want to code. And it's like, hey, okay, whatever makes you feel better, let's do it. It sounds like a great progressive idea. I'm not going to take the time to examine it past that. I'm just going to go back to my code, right?
And the white knight. Don't you think they're white knighting a lot?
Well, I think you're seeing that more, and now here's where I have seen it more in terms of an earnest desire rather than a sort of like capitulation or anything else. I think there's an earnest desire from a younger generation of developers, especially game developers, who are coming out of these schools that, unfortunately, I feel are doing a terrible disservice to students by deprogramming them or programming them, I don't know what you call it, into non-critical thinking, safe spaces, and an utter disdain and fear of any idea that does not agree with theirs. Yep. I think that upbringing in school is definitely affecting the next generation of developers as they come into companies. I think that's, I think with the older devs, it's a little bit of the capitulation and the just let's be progressive. Whatever you say is progressive is fine. I don't have time to think about it. Let's go make stuff happen. To a real earnest desire from younger developers to see a progressive agenda in ways that I think that they've been programmed to by the way our schools are structured.
Indoctrination. That's what Homer said on the chat.
I think there are two other groups that are really pushing this, and the first one is developers who can't make it on their own, who just don't have the chops to be a great programmer or game designer or whatever, are also pushing this as a way to either draw publicity to their subpar projects or as a way to try and get prominence and money that they would not be able otherwise to earn on their own merits. And I've seen that a lot over the last couple of years. And the other one is people who have started something that became hideously, insanely, amazingly successful, and now they have literally, $700 million or $1 billion at their beck and call that they worked for basically putting together a website, and they feel guilty because they really don't think they worked hard enough to earn this money. I mean, they literally had, and maybe still have, counselors in Silicon Valley, in Palo Alto, in San Francisco, to tell people, okay, you are absurdly rich, tech giants, rock and roll stars, things like that. What do you do so that you're not destroyed by the guilt that you have basically more money than just about everybody else on the planet? And they would tell them, okay, the first what you do is you take 10% of your money and you give it away to charity. That's your, that's your tithe to charity, so that you are giving back to the community. You're not just wasting money. But a lot of these people who have now $700 million or $1 billion are trying to save the world. They're rich, they're wealthy, they don't have to do anything else for the rest of their life. They can live however they want, pretty much, unless they just walk into Las Vegas and say, I'm going to put $100 million on that and blow it in an hour. But they can live pretty much any way they want. And progressive politics are a way of them to assuage the guilt. You see this in Jack Dorsey. You see this in Mark Zuckerberg. You see this in several other people.
Right. They got lucky. They made a lot of money. And then they turned into these social justice warriors to sort of justify their existence.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know them. I don't know what drives their psyche, but there's something to be said. I mean, it's often said that, hey, when you go through steps of fame or fortune or whatever, you do whatever it takes in the beginning, and after you have all the money, the last things you want are health and respect, because you've often traded both on your way to the top. And there is some of that. I belong to CEO groups that do have counseling for this type of thing, about, hey, I have all this money and it's not making me happy. I want to give back to the world. How can I do that? So, but these are exceedingly smart people. I mean, I can't just see them acting purely out of guilt. There has to be something else there. I have a little bit of a hard time believing that in some cases, I have to admit. The former group that you mentioned about, Klingons, in in the sense that they cling on to issues, it was guaranteed media coverage for several years. If you talked about social justice issues, you get a lot of coverage. I've seen companies latch onto that just for the media attention, and you definitely see, you definitely do see a phenomenon of less active developers who are more interested in talking about the theory of game design or the theory of game programming or the theory of game development than actually doing it, that have made very successful careers, at least in terms of publicity, being on panels and things like this, winning awards and that sort of thing, to sort of drive that. So I do see that. The CEO explanation, I'm still grasping at. I can't quite make that leap. It's hard for me to see that.
You know what I wouldn't give to need counseling because I had too much money? That's all I'm going to be able to think about now the rest of the show. I wish I had so much money I needed therapy.
Oh my God! Yeah, these CEO groups, they talk about that. They really, their money does not make you happy, and these people are seeking answers to a fulfilling life. So yeah, I definitely see the emotional motivation there. I just don't see how you go from that to some of the stances that these incredibly smart and hyper successful people take.
Professor, carry on. I know you had a list of questions, so it seems like we're knocking them down here. Keep going.
Oh yeah, Mark, you supported Trump early, and I thought that was a brave decision, a brave thing to do on Twitter. Can you tell our listeners, the thought process that led you to Trump?
Okay, well,
or did you change your mind?
Nothing changed my mind. I pretty much saw it happening, and what really did it for me was watching what he was saying versus how the media was portraying it, and it immediately reminded me of Gamergate. It immediately reminded me of taking an innocent statement and spinning it way out of context, and I was like, holy shit, the stuff that's happening in gaming press, it's not just limited to gaming press, it's happening everywhere, and he's going to be decimated, right? And let me make clear, I don't find Trump to be a particularly compelling candidate. I don't really like his demeanor. I don't, there's a lot of things I don't like about him. But what I do like about him, and what stood out immediately to me, was how he wasn't going to play the game. He wasn't going to play the media game. He wasn't going to play the establishment game. And he was going to disrupt these. Now, granted, I've had other people say, look, Cruz is the real disruptor. He really does have these whack policies, or these policies that, I don't want to call them whack, these policies that he believes in that are counter-establishment. But I said, yes, that may be true, but he doesn't have the people paying attention to that. He doesn't have he's not red pilling people. And the fact that Trump was red pilling people left and right was what I thought we really needed. And and as far as the dangers of his candidacy, I think they're way overblown. And we are in a country that has checks and balances. There's studies that show that the impact of a president's actions don't manifest for until years later. It's not like you're handing the keys to a maniac. It's been completely overblown, and
yes, I agree.
It's going to be a rational, democratic process throughout. Any new laws that we enact, we're going to get to debate and talk about and pass or not pass. That doesn't change. What does change is that you have someone in there that is helping to fight the PC culture, helping to expose the media machinery for the fraud that it is, and helping to expose the fact that both parties are actually the same in many cases. I mean, this is the first time we've ever had Republicans thinking about voting for Hillary, right? So,
right.
And we're starting to see how the money interests align. Now, having been a CEO and been in very high circles of VC funding, we're talking multi-billion-dollar funds and everything else. That corruption in that 1%, unfortunately, is very true. It does exist, and that sort of manipulation does exist. I've seen it firsthand, and so I'm really happy to see someone who's just saying, "Yeah, I know how all that works too. Screw you guys. I'm just going to do it my way," and to bring so many people with him to wake them up. To me, this is the revolution that some extremists have been talking about, but it is the way that revolution is supposed to happen in a democracy. This is one that is, quite tame, quite regulated, a democratic process versus going out there with, huge amounts of civil unrest and guns and everything else. Nobody wants that. So I see this as the needed pressure valve that America needs to really talk about these issues. We're now talking about political issues that were off the table for decades. Like you couldn't talk about some of this stuff, but now we are, and these are important conversations to have. So yeah, don't like Trump, like the disruption, feel we need disruption. My vote is in essence kind of like a protest vote, but also I think he's very skillful. I think he really does know how to handle this stuff well, regardless of how I feel about his personality.
That was great. That was an excellent summary. And I think you probably captured how 70% of his supporters probably feel.
I've never been to a Trump rally. I can't say.
I have been to a Trump rally. I was at one just a few months ago, and I think from the people I spoke to, and I did try to make it a point to speak to a few of them, the ones that were screaming at me, that they were pretty much rational people who I think felt the way you did. And I think a lot of people are underestimating the way that this is a pushback against PC and outrage culture. I think that's how he started. It might not be the main reason that he maintained his followers or that that's still growing in them. And I mean, polls today show Hillary's negatives are almost dead even with his, and he's catching up to her. In some polls, he's overtaken her. But I think the genesis of his popularity still was in that PC pushback.
Yep, there's that, and the more important part, the more lasting part in our government is exposing the machinery behind the media and the parties. People are getting an education about how all that really works.
Yes, yep, I agree. Very rarely do you leave Bacon speechless, but I have nothing really to add to that. Great.
Did you see any women at the rally? Any minorities?
Yes, I saw plenty of women, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Though I saw plenty of black people, and I saw some Hispanics at the rally, and the local media at least the ones that I saw. So I don't want to say everyone because I didn't see every single image, but I didn't see them included in any of the pictures I saw published in the local paper or nor did I see them interviewed. I mean, I looked at the coverage of the local areas because I was there, but to me, it seemed almost impossible to accidentally not include any of the minority groups I saw at the rally in any of those photos, but yet they weren't there. So I'm not a conspiracy theory guy, but it seemed a little odd to me. That's what I'll have to say, I guess.
No, I was following that closely too. I mean, what the media chose to show in terms of photographs was very interesting, and you know, and the fact is, the people who were at those rallies, and my goodness, I've never seen rallies for a presidential candidate that packed. You know, they know they were there, and then they go read in the papers and they see the photos and they're like, this isn't what happened at all, and that's glorious. That's like America waking up. That's great.
Yeah. See, by the way, Mark, that little speech you gave justifies the title I gave to this stream. It is a kernel of truth with Mark Kern.
I hate you.
Yeah, I thought that parallel Mark drew with Gamergate, you know, is really insightful because we do see the same kinds of twisting by the media going on with Trump that we saw with Gamergate. Trump says something like the Mexican government is sending their criminals to the United States, and somehow the media twists that into Trump is racist and hates all Mexicans. And yeah, so I just want to agree with Mark that you're seeing the same kinds of manipulations in the media with Trump that you saw with Gamergate. But you know, speaking of Gamergate, I've always wanted to ask Mark this question, which is, what took you so long to get on board?
Oh, geez. I was watching. I mean, I remember when the Five Guys video went up, and I was showing it to my wife, and I'm like, what's going on? You know? And I didn't think anything of it, and then it just kind of blew up. And from my side of it, you know, I know the games media very well, having worked with them at AAA publisher level and worked at them, you know, at independent level, and bought ads, and I knew the kind of stuff that was going on. I just knew, you know. And so when it started gathering steam, I was very interested because, again, I was like, okay, this type of reform needs to happen in games journalism. But at the same time, I was very cautious because there was a lot of mud thrown at Gamergate, and I didn't know what to believe. And so, you know, when I joined in after the SVU episode, just to throw my 2 cents in, you know, I wasn't quite ready. It took me 3 months of interacting with both sides, trying to understand this thing inside and out, realizing how complex of an issue and how much FUD had been thrown over it before I was comfortable saying I support Gamergate. And you know, it's difficult, and I kept trying to explain this to people back then. It's like, the issue seems clear-cut to you, but no one can really understand your cause because it's so complex. Because every time you'd ask someone what Gamergate was about, they would start from the beginning, and every wrong that had ever been done to them is recited. It's almost like an oral tradition, right? and you're 20 minutes into this, and I just have to say, stop. No normie's gonna get this, you know.
Right.
You need to cut through this with a clearer message, and I think the Airplay panel actually ended up doing that, which, you know, I was against because I didn't like the way it was structured or whatever. But I have to say that it actually worked. That it actually, I think, you know, brought a lot of legitimacy to the claims that no, we really are talking about how messed up the game industry and especially games journalism is right now. Then I think, you know, we kind of split off into how PC should we be, how not PC should we be only about ethics or anything else, and that's when I bowed out when I was getting tone policed, and I was just like, I don't want to do this. I just want to fight for games, you know. So,
yeah, no, I know. It kind of sucks that happened. Because I saw your entry into Gamergate as something very positive. It seemed like there was a lot of excitement when you came out in support of Gamergate finally, and you know, people rallied around you. And I don't know. It felt like the group was a lot stronger because you had joined. But yeah, so it's too bad what happened. I saw when you left, and I felt bad because I thought that the tone policing was wrong, and that speech should always win out. But that brings me to my next question: is did you see Gamergate as more about ethics and journalism, or a fight against, or a culture war against these social justice warriors?
At first, it definitely was, for me, an ethics question. I mean, the way the SVU episode was just lifted from the headlines of these smear articles, and because I'd been following the facts very closely, silently, I knew there were smear articles. I knew there was no basis to them. But the fact that it was picked up hook, line, and sinker, and turned into a television show was too much for me. And that, it started off very much as that. But then when I started to look at the root cause for why the media was doing this, to me, and I know people disagree, to me the root cause was the social justice agenda driving all of this. And so I was like, we need to attack the root cause as well as all this stuff. And then it just became obvious that it was everywhere. It wasn't just in games. I didn't know it was in tabletop. Someone told me it was in tabletop. I didn't know it was in sci-fi till the whole Hugo thing came on, and and I got in, and I jumped in with that too, because that was a lot of fun, by the way, and I'm going to do it again. So I was like, this root cause is not just a threat to games; it's a threat to our ability as a society to come together and to focus on what we agree on, rather than highlighting our differences and drawing lines in the sand all the time.
Right.
Now, Mark, when you first joined Gamergate, were you concerned at all about your career going forward?
I haven't worked for someone else other than a board of directors in a long time. So no, the thought never really occurred to me. I mean, I've always been an entrepreneur. I always do my own thing. Like, who's going to fire me? That's not going to work.
I guess the bottom line is I just really want to be Mark Kern.
Well, I've had other CEOs, very successful CEOs, email me, and they can't say anything about Gamergate because they're a public company. I just want, so yeah, I mean, I guess I had the freedom because I'm not, some Uber CEO of some Uber company. I'm a small entrepreneur, but self-employed and have been for a long, long time. So I was quite comfortable saying whatever as I wanted to say. I had the freedom to do that. Most people don't. And if you're the CEO of a gigantic company, you actually definitely don't, which is kind of sad, because I would love to tell you, oh my God, so-and-so is totally Gamergate. But I can't.
I think what I'm going to have to do is download the World of Warcraft cookbook after the show and think about the support groups for people with too much money and the guys that don't have to have bosses, and just drink grog until I pass out.
Yes.
That is the plan for the rest of the evening, just so you know, right after this.
Which grog? Aren't there like 50 different grogs in there?
Yeah, I'm going to drink them all. Everyone. One of each.
Just go down the line.
One of each grog. That's what I'm going to do. Mark, I wanted to ask you, have you ever stumbled on it? Just a kind of a fun question for a guy who likes games and, a guy who's spearheaded World of Warcraft, so I value your opinion. Have you ever stumbled on a game and it just by accident that someone maybe recommended to you, or you just found lying around? Because this happened to me a few years ago, and it was just so damn good. You didn't expect much of it, but you were so shocked, and you thought, I got to tell all my friends about this game. Just a surprise game. Took you out of nowhere.
Well, I think for me it would be a lot of the more indie games. I think, FTL surprised me. It was not what I thought at all. FTL is a little space game where you're escaping and you have to survive as long as you can and navigate the galaxy to the other end. And that was just a fun little romp. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I haven't played this ever since it came out. I wish everybody knew about this. So But anything that's really like totally knocked my socks off,
Yeah.
probably not. Not quite yet.
Well, I'll tell you why I'm asking. Maybe you'll see where I'm coming from. I had a friend recently ask me to recommend a game to him, so I gave him one, and I realized that it may suck. He may hate it because the graphics are terrible and it's cheesy and corny, but it's called Deadly Premonition, and I stumbled upon it a few years back. Japanese game, I think, and it's just something about it. It's very cleverly written. I mean, it's a 360 game. The graphics are ridiculously bad. There's some driving mechanics in there that are horrible, but it is, to me, just a real pleasant surprise. I don't think that studio's ever made another game that I know of. Amazing story, someone just said in the chat. Yeah, so to me, that's just one that took me by surprise, and so...
what's it called again?
Deadly Premonition.
Deadly Premonition. Okay, is it a PC game or a console game?
It's a console game.
Okay. That's probably why I didn't hear about it. I don't play console very much.
Oh, right, you and Professor are those PC
There you go.
All right, so keep laughing.
Yeah, I try not to mix with the filthy peasants too often. Just
Excellent.
I'm betting money that Microsoft is going to be eliminating the console pretty soon anyway.
Yeah, I know.
Yep.
Oh, how's that?
Oh, it's also on PC, I was just told, so you can get it on PC.
Oh, okay. That's good. I taught my kids that. I was joking around with them about PC Master Race and filthy console peasants, and I wish I had, because they play on PC. They also play a little console. They play, but mostly on PC. And all day they were going around joking around about it, and they're like 8 and 11, and I'm thinking, oh no, don't go to school and start talking about this stuff.
I should have never even gotten into it. I made the mistake of saying months ago that I bought a Mac, and now every smart-ass person who stumbles across the show on YouTube sends me a link, and says, oh, here's a free Steam code. Oh, wait, oops, it's for PCs, and you're having Mac. It's very, very cruel, but it happens all the time.
Really?
All the time.
I've been openly Mac since early on in Gamergate. I never had anybody give me, real flack about it.
Yeah, of course not. Yeah, that's I don't know. I don't know why I get the flack.
All three. I'm on Mac, I'm on Linux, and I'm on Windows, and Windows is my least favorite.
Professor.
Oh, now I feel uncrushed, Mark.
Can I say something too? I want to go back to what Mark was talking about earlier in the show and what Bacon asked about. It's kind of heartbreaking to me because I was way too young to be involved anywhere near any of this, but you read the stories of the early pioneers of what came to be Silicon Valley, hanging around Berkeley, making clones of operating system for mainframes and developing Unix and all of the underpinnings of the internet and all this other great stuff, and they were all firmly committed to free speech, firmly committed to the rights of programmers, the rights of users. And it was a very freewheeling, very almost, you'd have to say, libertarian sort of attitude. And to see Silicon Valley culture go authoritarian is a complete betrayal of the origins of everything we use nowadays.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff started with crypto anarchists, people really devoted to fighting the system. Information must be free, all this other stuff. Money changes things, It's sad but true. I mean, it really, people change when they're exposed to a lot of money, and I've seen this so many times. And I don't know. You're right. It's sad because it used to be polar opposite of what it is now, and now we have top tech firms colluding with governments to suppress speech. Filter stuff. It's just I don't understand it either. It's really the antithesis of what the whole hacker community was about. And maybe it's yeah. I just that's very curious. I don't quite understand it.
My first tech job, which is my first real job, was in 1994. I got a job working for Prodigy Internet Service.
Holy crap, you're old.
Prodigy. And I remember being involved in all the Usenet discussion groups, because that's all we had back then. I mean, that was even before the World Wide Web got big, which happened a year later in '95. But
I had a Prodigy account. I had a Prodigy.
Yeah. But I remember all these discussions, and you could be from anywhere, and you could talk, and you could say anything, and there were discussion groups for everything, and nobody worried about government censorship or companies censoring things, and because nobody thought it would ever happen. And now we have Facebook that controls the media that 1 billion people sees. 1 billion people. 1 out of every 7 people on the planet is on Facebook.
1.6 billion, I believe.
Oh, my word. And Facebook is now editing and censoring and shaping and manipulating so that people start thinking the things Facebook wants. That's just, it's appalling.
Yeah, I think, we talked about this, on Twitter a lot for the past year, and I think we were first to see this coming in some ways, at least that I'm aware of. Obviously I can't see all of the Twitter sphere, but we were talking about in Gamergate how, free speech is becoming not only the duty of a government now, but also the duty of these massive media holders that have the eyeballs, the exclusive eyeballs of billions of people, and how there is no law that protects us from that kind of manipulation, and there's no transparency. I'm loath to say there should be a law that forces them to do certain things, but I think maybe we can be more transparent about it, about the filtering. Why isn't filtering under user control? Why is it some nebulous, what we assumed before was an algorithm, which turned out to be human beings inserting their bias? Why isn't this transparent? There is a responsibility of social media companies that control the majority of the discourse now happening in the world to be transparent about how they're being selective about this information. That has to happen.
And why is it that people are so loath to use the free market to control these companies? 1.6 billion Facebook users, and they announced that they're manipulating the trends like this artificially, having lied to us and said it was an algorithm. Why didn't I wake up the next day and find that they have 1.2 billion users? Why do you think that the public is so unwilling to use the power of the free market to correct these things?
Because all their friends are on Facebook still.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
It's a network effect.
It's
and
lazy.
Dependency. I mean, we rely on this stuff now for our news. We rely on it for staying connected with people. We can't just suddenly go to a smaller service where most of our friends aren't on there and most of the news we get isn't on there. I think that's a huge barrier. The only defense really is to try to get your news sources from as many places as possible, and to put the pieces together yourself. But that's a lot of work.
Right.
And that's the sad thing is you could do that on a place like Dig or Reddit, where they brought in news sources from all over the internet, and then all of a sudden the management of Dig and Reddit go fully social justice and start censoring what can show up there.
Yeah, I had an idea about, I don't know, I want to say about 8 years ago, where I wanted to create a news network that was completely driven by, and this was inspired by, maybe it wasn't 8 years ago. When was the Arab Spring? When did that occur? Does anybody know?
2012?
Okay, 2012. Yeah. Maybe thereabouts. So maybe 5 years ago. 4 or 5 years ago, I said, it would be great if because I remember the old CNN. You remember the old CNN where they would send reporters in on site and you'd get the raw, unfiltered footage over grainy, technology at the time, but you could see what was happening on the ground in these countries as unrest was happening. It's like, why don't we just have an app for people that lets anybody become a reporter? And if they don't have phones, why don't we, instead of flying in a reporter, fly in a plane and drop 10,000 phones into the area, and they all have this app, and it all feeds into a website where we can see people's unfiltered reporting on this stuff. And then, using sort of and then we'd have a full 360 view of what was happening on the ground, and then we could make our own decisions about how to determine what was actually going on. And I don't know what sort of algorithm you would need to bubble that stuff up to the top, but it's like, why can't we democratize the news a little more? Why can't we turn every single person out there into a reporter with their mobile phone?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Never happened though, Mark.
I think that's a great idea to put in a, and this is not meant to be slighting at all. This is absolutely not meant to be a slight. I think that's a great idea for a science fiction story, or to put into an RPG background. I think that's a fascinating idea. Did Little Brother, which was all about, I haven't read it. Science fiction book. I can't remember the author's name, but he also did Down and Out in Magic Kingdom. Little Brother was all about fighting the Big Brother state, the Big Brother surveillance state, with everyone having cameras on them and keeping track of what's going on. I wonder if he talked about that in that book.
Oh, I never read that book, but you just remind me of another book, Neil Stephenson's. What was his first breakout hit again?
Snow Crash?
No Crash. Remember the Gargoyles? The Gargoyles were these guys that their whole hobby was like to put strapped camera lenses on them and audio things, and they would just soak up data and retransmit it to everybody else. And whatever was happening around them, it kind of reminds me of that too. But yeah, great science fiction premise, but if we could make that work, I mean, I would much rather see some sort of montage of reports on the ground, people actually experiencing it, than some talking head who lied about being under fire in a helicopter telling me what the truth
I can't believe
now
it.
that I think about it, that is a really good idea. Mark, Kickstarter, I think this is a great idea.
Brett. So Brian Williams took sniper fire, but I think Hillary also took some sniper fire, she said.
Yeah, I heard they were killed and resurrected.
Right, yeah, that's right.
from divine providence, yeah.
I'm pretty sure Hillary's story was that she saw people literally running with their heads down because of sniper fire, and I'm pretty sure that was bullshit.
Yes, everyone's sure that was bullshit.
Well,
Professor, before I forget, I just want to do a quick favor, Professor. When Kate Nelligan wakes up tomorrow and I am passed out on the floor surrounded by empty grog glasses, just tweet her and let her know what happened tonight. So, Mark, another quick question for you. What's coming out that you're looking forward to in the near future?
Game-wise?
Yeah.
I'm so jaded.
Movie-wise, I'm assuming you're going to say WoW, right?
I'm so afraid. I'm so afraid. And so I'm a parent, right? We don't get to see movies in theaters unless we can arrange a day or but usually we catch it later. I've yet to see Civil War. I heard it was awesome. Killing me. All right, maybe I'll have to this weekend make myself go see it. I'm not really looking forward to anything. AAA games kind of bore me now. They're so formulaic. They play it so safe. It's like I miss the days where a game would come out.
Oh, I'm so glad that you said that. Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you tweeted this the other day, and I'm so glad that you just brought that up because it reminded me I wanted to talk to you about it. You tweeted that games today are like little safe spaces. So they're so easy, and there's no penalty for death. And I was just wondering if you wanted to expand on that a little.
Well, yeah. I mean, I actually got some tweets back from that further educated me and formulated my thoughts. I guess it was a Gamma Sutra article about, games lacking consequence and being more about a hopping from vignette and being reward based, getting you, pushing the lever to get your reward, rather than making you jump through hoops to get the reward. And I think it's because of a lot of factors, one of which is just shortage of time, for internet time, computer time. Our computer time back when WoW was out there, there was no Twitter, there was no Facebook. There was people had a lot more time to play games online, and now that you have to compete with everything else, and so with this shorter attention span, and people want to get their gratification right away. So who can fault them? Who can fault it if you want to reach that mass market, making your game simpler and making it about, hey, push F and we'll get to the next cutscene and you can feel good. But on the other hand, it's really self-destructive for a game like an MMO long term. I think this is we've fallen into a trap where we have made it so single player and reduced the dependency on other people. We have trivialized the accomplishments that people hop from MMO to MMO because there's no longer an investment in any one game that keeps you there, either socially or gear-wise or achievement-wise, that we really shot ourselves in the foot there by streamlining it too much. And I'm glad to see the resurgence of games like Dark Souls, which I think is hilarious because everyone says like, "Oh, it's such a hard game," but that was like normal difficulty back in the day. And I remember the only games I was frustrated about. This is kind of an aside. European games in the 80s were the hardest things to play. Those guys were just masochists. I don't know, probably because they had their countries destroyed in a world war. It's like, this is nothing to them, right? But here in the United States, it was a little too much. And now we're into, so I'm sorry, I'm drifting off the topic a little bit, but yeah, I do think that games are sort of moving more towards this, and now I have a framework to talk about it thanks to people tweeting me about it, more of a rewards framework rather than an achievement consequence framework. And that's okay. That's how you want to spend your time. That's cool. But I still think that there is still a core audience out there that wants the challenge, that wants the sense of achievement, and in an MMO, the socialization that happens. And I think that companies that pursue that will be rewarded. Yeah, you're not going to get 12 million subscribers to your MMO, but you'll get 1, maybe 2 million, and you could make a decent business out of that.
Well, maybe this is the result of the participation trophy generation growing up and starting to make games. I don't know, but I'll tell you what. I've mentioned this on the show many times, but my badge of honor as a gamer has always been that I was one of the few that I knew to have beaten the original Ghosts and Goblins way back.
Yeah.
That was harder than Dark Souls to me, if you ask me. I mean, that's the way I remember it.
That was a tough game. Mm-hmm.
Somebody on the chat said was talking about Diablo 2 in Hell mode. You get killed, lose all your EXP and your gold. I don't know. I don't know if that had a reputation for being hard or not. I will say this about Diablo, the third one. I thought that their loot sharing system was the best I've ever seen, and I think it should be just anyone who wants to do loot sharing from now on should just implement that system and be done with it.
In Diablo 2?
Yeah, the last one.
Diablo 3, yeah.
Yeah.
Where no more ninja looting. Everybody sort of sees what they get for themselves and then picks it up. Yeah, there are conveniences.
And you can put it in your mailbox.
Yep, there are conveniences.
You can put it in your mailbox, right? And your friend can pick it up, that kind of thing. But like in the Division, they just tried to implement loot sharing with a patch, and basically all it is you drop the item on the ground and someone else grabs it. So it's not quite as
that's like EverQuest 1.
It's not very
servers. I don't know if you guys remember this, but in EverQuest 1, it was like you could drop a gold piece and individually. So people would drop a gold piece and then a second gold piece and a third gold piece, and by the time that they had dropped enough coins, they would basically crash everyone else around them that was entering the zone.
No, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, the Division being coded the way it is, because I understand that it trusts the client a lot, meaning that the server is not the determiner of what actually happens. That the server is just going to believe whatever the gamer is telling it is happening. That's ripe for that sort of bug. So I can't wait to see that happen. If they have a loot sharing system like that, if people start, I want to jump in there now and start dropping like 100 items and see if I can get this.
Well, it only allows you to drop whatever you just picked up in the last hour, and it says that you can only share it with who's in your group. So, but I have heard that people have already found a way around that. So I don't know, and if that works, if it's that way on PC, I'm sure they'll find a way to abuse it for sure. You know, those nefarious PC players like Professor. So, are you when you heard that you Bull wasn't going to direct World of Warcraft movie? Did you pass out from relief?
Oh, I was never worried. I mean, they've been pitching the Warcraft movie, and I think before that we were pitching the StarCraft movie for a long time. And there was a time where Blizzard was actually merged with Universal through a parent company called Vivendi. And there was a director of synergy. Synergy was the big buzzword back then. And even with all this synergy, we could not get a movie made, even though we were part of a group that included a gigantic movie studio. It just would not happen. And I remember having to give a presentation to the producers of The Mummy and The Mummy 2. And this was my first exposure to Hollywood. And the guy showed up an hour late, and yet we were all supposed to pay this deference, and it was really weird. It's like, do not look Mr. So-and-so in the eye, and do not, it's like,
oh my God.
Do not refer to him as this. Don't mention this movie ever. I mean, it wasn't quite that
Emperor of Japan?
But it had that vibe, and so here I was demoing WoW to the producer of The Mummy, and he was late. He didn't care. He didn't apologize. We were all there just for him, and I was like, I can't stand it. Hollywood's not for me.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd ever get a movie made under those circumstances.
Yeah,
my mouth is way too big.
So if you want to get a movie made, be prepared to cater to some massive egos.
I'm really curious about it, to be honest, because it's got to be a tough movie to make. I mean, it's got a lot of lore involved, and it's got to appeal to non-players and players, and I'm sure they're trying to make it appeal to people who never played the game. I mean, that's just the way Hollywood works. So,
I have a lot of fears, right? Unjustified, unfounded fears, but just like, oh my God, how are they going to make CG and live action blend seamlessly? And am I going to really, suspend my disbelief that that huge shoulder pad armor is actually going to look good in film, and I won't be bothered by it? I have a lot of little niggling worries, but who knows? I mean, I'm going to watch it. I'm excited to try it out and hope that it's not unfounded. I mean, it's not going to be bad. Like, remember the Dungeons and Dragons movie that came out?
Yeah. Oh, jeez.
Okay, so my whole team at Blizzard, I think we took the whole company to see it back when Blizzard was small enough you could do that at the time. And when at the end of the movie, I remember somebody yelling out, "I want a new DM!" And we just all started busting out laughing. It was the most awful adventure, and it was like so true. And so no, it's not going to be like that. It's going to be somewhere. It's going to be better than that. How good it's going to be, I don't know, but I'm so worried because I really want it to be good.
Now, do you know if they reached out to any of the original WoW writers for their feedback or help on this, or do you know?
I have no idea. I mean, when I was there, we were doing pitch packets left and right. And by the way, pitch packets for movies have to be these glorious bound affairs with full color prints and things like this. And
nowadays they have to do CGI movies for pitches.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, but it's very elaborate. Just sort of like, I guess, when you're going for an Oscar, you have to send out these sort of elaborate packages to get noticed by the Academy voters. I have no insight as to how they ended up with the writers. I know that there was a couple of changes in staff here and there, but let's cross our fingers. Hey, we really could use a great video game movie because it's worked for comics. Why can't it work for games?
I'm not sure that you need that much of a pitch for the Oscars anymore. I'm pretty sure. In fact, my brother has a theory that there's a race in Hollywood now to be the first filmmaker to get Leonardo DiCaprio crying over a bathroom stall because he's not allowed in the ladies' room, and that's the instant Oscar winner. The first one to get that on film, I think, is probably going to take that home this year. So, listen, I'm really curious about the. So you haven't had discussions. It's 11 years that this game has been out, and it seems so hard to make a movie from that much without reaching out to guys like you and old writers. And I'm just really curious about how they've done it. So you haven't had discussions with them at all?
No, no. I mean, Blizzard. The heart and soul of Blizzard storytelling is Chris Metzen. They would often say that 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 Metzen is the soul of Blizzard lore, and I love Metzen. I think he's a fantastic guy. He's really colorful. He's awesome to talk to, both as an interview as well as day to day. He's got great terms like epicity. We need more epicity in this, and mitosity, and he loves to say things like "give it some more pepper," and I'm like, yeah, let's do this. And so I'm sure he would be very involved with driving that, because he drove all the novels and everything else, and he's been there. And honestly, we took our stories cues from him. For World of Warcraft, he spent over a month in a room that we had lined with whiteboards that he did nothing but draw maps and flesh stuff out, because it didn't exist. We had the Warcraft game, but we didn't have a whole world. And so if he's on it, it's going to have that passion. So and yeah, I mean, honestly, consulting other people on the team that were on the story, it's like, we didn't know what it was. Metzen would come in one day and say, "Hey, we're going to put antlers on this guy," and we're like, "Antlers? Yeah, really cool. Okay."
Don't think I didn't notice all that uncomfortable chuckling at that Oscars joke either, you bunch of cowards. Hey, Warpig, I'm curious about your take, because you're the movie guy I count on for these kinds of things. What do you think are the obstacles in making a movie out of a game that's been out 11 years?
Deciding what you want to do the story about, cutting down all the lore and getting what you're going to do it, then getting a plot. This is the thing. This is the thing that Deadpool did that so many Hollywood movies don't do. People in Hollywood are lazy. You cannot imagine how lazy some of these people are. And I'll tell you an example. 30 years ago, they released Top Gun, which was an awesome movie that they did an insane amount of work to shoot all the air scenes. They had to work with the Navy. Those are real scenes. They really shot for the movie. They're not stock film. And it did gangbusters. People loved it, right?
Yes.
So Paramount, after the movie got released, they said, we're going to do Top Gun 2. And what we're going to do is we're going to take all the leftover footage from Top Gun 1, and that's going to be our combat footage for Top Gun 2. The entire movie. We're not going to shoot a single frame with airplanes. Well, they didn't have any leftover footage. Literally, every single inch of usable footage is in the movie. There's nothing left over. But that's the laziness. They just wanted to do something quick to make some money. And so you see people kind of rush through a script in 4 weeks. The script for Transformers and Transformers 2 and Transformers 3 was done by taking Kurtzman and Orsi and sticking them in a motel for 4 weeks and letting them write the story, and then the story has to include all of the action scenes they already decided were going to be in the movie. They just had to figure out how to link the action scenes together.
While Megan Fox washed their cars in a bikini outside their windows.
Yeah. So when you look at a movie like World of Warcraft, it is just going to take time. You have to be willing to invest a lot of time in developing a script and redeveloping a script and doing it the absolute best you can and ignoring all the BS that people who have say in the process but don't have any intelligence or talent try to throw at you. Here's another example. Deadpool has a non-linear story, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. I know
they had
what
a Fox executive. One Fox executive sent a note down. The movie was done. They were just editing it and putting it together. The Fox executive sends it down and says, I don't like this, that it's a non-linear story. It's going to confuse the audience, make it a linear movie. So they had to recut the whole movie and make an entire cut of it that was linear, 100% linear. And it was shit. Everybody hated it because it was boring, because it was trite, because it had been done before. It's a very straightforward story if it's just told linearly. Mm-hmm. So fortunately, they got around that. They didn't have to do that, but that's the kind of thing that happens. And you get stories ruined just because some asshole needs to show that he really deserves his job as an executive, or he has a ego. He just wants to to tell other people what to do, whatever.
Now, are you surprised or no that World of Warcraft got made before the Halo movie got greenlit?
I don't. 99% of the things that get optioned in Hollywood never get made. The entire Hollywood studio system is set up to say no to movies. And for good reason. Have you ever heard of the Blacklist?
Yeah, yep. That's where
Yeah,
that Reagan movie. That's where the Reagan movie came from.
The Blacklist is a list of 100 scripts that weren't getting made, that didn't get sold. And it's supposed to be this vast gold mine of movies that were unfairly overlooked, of movie scripts, that were unfairly overlooked. Well, the fact is, every single Blacklist script that's gotten actually made into a movie has done terribly because they're shit. Good scripts are hard to come by. Good writers and good directors are very, very hard to find. It's easy to find bad writers in Hollywood. It's easy to find bad directors in Hollywood. But people doing great work are actually really hard to find. Scripts are really hard to write. They're a lot harder to write than just about anything else other than poetry. And they say no to movies because just about everything that comes across their desk really is crap.
And yet somehow Neighbors 2 got made.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to have to explain that to me. I don't understand.
Well, it's because the first one did well enough as in came in far enough above its budget to have been worth making, and so they could throw together another script and make a new one because, hey, people saw the first one, maybe they'll go see the second one. That's how The Hangover 2 and 3 got made.
Have you noticed that every single trailer for every Seth Rogen movie ever is simply a slow motion montage of him getting stoned? It's incredible to me. I don't understand how that guy keeps getting movies. I don't know. It's like that, Dane Cook was criticizing the guy who didn't want to watch Ghostbusters earlier, and people were like, Dane Cook, who the hell are you? That guy's been... Unless he retired off that one Kool-Aid joke, I don't know what Walmart he's working in, but he's got some nerve.
Professor, my entire memory of Dane Cook is that about 3 years ago or 4 years ago, everybody hated him.
Yeah, he's terrible.
And now he's so far off the radar that people don't even bother hating him anymore.
I'm sorry if I offended you with that Uwe Boll crack Warpig. I know you really like that guy.
Like what guy?
Uwe Boll.
I don't know that I've ever seen a Uwe Boll movie.
Don't.
I've heard lots of bad stuff about him, and he's nuts, but...
He had there was a petition asking him to not make movies again, and he said that he would retire from making movies if it got like 1 million signatures. And I think it didn't get him, but I think it came close.
Did you ever hear about why he can make movies?
No.
The Germans had a tax break for anyone shooting a movie based in Germany or with scenes shot in Germany, whatever. And so Uwe Boll could make enough money off of these terrible, shitty movies just to keep making them because of the tax break, it made it profitable. And he made money on it, so he could keep on doing it.
He did the Blood Rain movie, and he did the House of the Dead movie, so he doesn't have a good track record. I think I saw something that I think he asked to do the WoW movie and was turned down. I think he wanted that material for some reason.
He did Dead or Alive, I believe.
Yep.
I've seen a movie that had Uwe Boll in it because he was attached as a producer, but he didn't direct. I think he played the President of the United States.
Of course he did. Professor, you keep coughing. Do you have bird flu?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
That was discrimination.
I know.
So, do you have any more questions for Mark?
No, he answered all my questions.
Mark, do you have anything? You want to tell us more about that tabletop game? Because I believe you dropped out right when you started the explanation, and I was curious to hear a little bit more about it.
Oh, I thank you for the opportunity to plug the game, but it's in its nascent form. I'm designing it, and I'm blogging about it as I design it. I'm trying to figure out ways to share the playtest sessions as we do this because I think it'd be interesting. It's a very new endeavor for me. I don't know my way around tabletop, and maybe I don't want to. The more I learn about the tabletop industry, the less I want to be a part of the drama, and I just want to make this game. So,
So in other words,
do you
the
mind if
concept may very well wind up as a video game then.
well, it might, because Krixa is a space opera tabletop game, but its focus is really allowing you to not just have ground adventures, which a lot of space games do well, but to also have adventures that occur completely in space. Everybody has their own individual spacecraft, and I really like that about an old MMO called Earth and Beyond, where you could group up and fly together and take on tasks together. So I want to see if I can design something that interchanges between those freely and richly, and treats your spacecraft as a second character. But obviously, I'm also looking at video game adaptations of this, and I keep thinking about an old Microsoft game called Allegiance, and how much fun we used to have playing that at Blizzard. Or I should say that they played it, because I didn't play it much at the time, but I would just be like, oh my god, that sounds so cool. And so now I'm hopping on to old servers and learning the game, and thinking that there's a genre here that's untapped. So maybe one day, but for now, I just want to get my vision of a tabletop space opera out there, because it's refreshing to be able to design something with just yourself, or maybe one or two other designers. I've been working on teams of hundreds of people, and it can be kind of exhausting to try to get your vision through. So this is a nice cleanse of the palate, I guess you could call it. And if you want to find out more about it, you can just go to Krixa.io. It's the rabbit word for crossroads from Watership Down, spelled Krixa.io, and you'll be able to follow the development of the game as we go along. I've already had a lot of art done for it. It's in a very retro style, from the golden age of sci-fi, 70s, 80s, 90s, things like that. Chris Foss inspired stuff, bringing back some of that mystery, and so you can sort of see the sausage being made, so to speak, as we go along.
I can honestly say that was probably the first Watership Down reference on the show. I do remember that depressing movie about rabbits from a long time ago. I liked it, actually. I liked that movie.
That was good.
I did like it. I want to add, too, before we let everyone go, just for anyone out there, I'm probably going to be in Georgia sometime early June, and I know there's a couple of listeners who've already gotten a hold of me that live down in Savannah or near Savannah. So if anybody wants to have a beer with bacon, I'll get you the exact date, and DM me, and we'll work that out for sure. Professor, I'd ask you, but you stood me up in New York City, so you're out. And it was cruel.
You guys are in Albuquerque.
I went to. Why would I be in Albuquerque? There was one Gamergate meetup that I actually went to in New York City, and Professor was supposed to be there. That's why I was excited about going, but he blew me off. So
I know, and now there are no more Gamergate get-togethers. I wanted to go to the one in L.A. with
that
Mark.
was great, because Mercedes was there.
Oh, you went to one, Mark? I forgot. You did. You went to the LA one, right?
I did go to the LA one, and I met a lot of great people, and it was a really cool experience. And had to help someone get home who was very, very inebriated, and that was very challenging. But
yeah, was it Mercedes? Did you get
no, it wasn't Mercedes.
Join us next week as Mark gets a divorce attorney. And, when you go to one of those meetings, Mark, you could be the guy, because they all love you. You're like a god for gamers, right? So you could send an advanced guy and say, hey, don't look Mark in the eye.
Oh, my God. We used to joke about that on interviews, not with myself, but with our art director. We just, I don't know why we picked him, but we said, yeah. Oh, I remember why. He had a cast on his leg. He had gotten drunk and slipped on an ice sculpture and broken his leg or something like that at one of our parties. And so we had an interview, the next week, and we would tell the interviewees, it's like, whatever you do, don't mention the leg. And they're like, what leg? And we said, exactly. And they didn't.
Oh, that is
talk about it.
Practical jokes on people like that are just fantastic. You know, I'll tell you what. Once I shouldn't even be telling you this because it's cruel, but when I was a kid, when I was right out of high school, I had a job with a couple of friends of mine at a local Friendlies. That was like one of our like a summer job, you know. And they had this stupid little position called customer service supervisor, and two of us had been appointed that ridiculous, like, emperor of the ice cream or whatever we called it, you know. So one of the things we did was we interviewed people, and one one day this poor goofy bastard came in, and he wasn't going to get the job, and he was just kind of an idiot. And my buddy said, "Let's play a joke on this guy." So we did. What we told him, look, we really prefer it if you're really familiar with all our ice creams, how they taste, and how so you can explain them to the customers when you get the job. So tomorrow I want you to go. We don't do the training in this store, but I want you to go down to the store on Wolf Road and just go right on back there, grab a spoon, and just start eating sampling some of the ice cream, so you're familiar with them, you know. So next day, 24 hours later, we get a call from the store manager at Wolf Road asking us if we sent some idiot to walk behind the counter and just start gobbling down ice cream.
Boy, he really wanted that job.
He's a poor kid. They had to put him out. It was, I don't know who he was, but if you know him, I apologize. Well, Mark, I think we've taken up enough of your time. We've grabbed you for for a good hour and a half.
This was so much fun. Thank you, Bacon. This is great.
Yeah, listen, Mark, you're awesome.
I would love to have you back if there's any chance I can get you back someday. Most of the guests agree to it, but then the next day the fallout comes and they get divorced or fired or whatever. So
I don't know. If we bring that if we make it like a cooking fun and we all bring a dish, if we're not physically located, we all have to bring a dish and a drink, and then talk.
I promise you, I'm going to be hitting the grog, and if there's any way I can get into that support group undercover, just to hear.
The woe is me, I have too much money support group.
Yes, I really want to hear. I want to know how that goes. I just want to be a part of that once in my life.
Dude, it is sad to hear. It is really. I'm saying. I mean, it's really sad. You do these ultra successful people. Now, let's not end on a sad note. It was hilarious. Oh my god.
I'm just glad you were here when I shared that fact, because I'm sure nobody would believe me if I had just said that. Oh yeah, there's a support group for CEOs who make too much money because it makes them miserable. Nobody would have believed me if you hadn't been here.
No, it's true. It wasn't a continuous support group, but it's a recurring topic.
All right, well, Mark, I'm going to hold you to your word. I want you to come back on the show, okay?
Hey, we gotta have the grog, and we gotta have a potluck, and let's do it.
All right, fantastic. I'm hoping to get Nick Cole back too. He was a good interview. I count on the Professor and War Pig, as I told you before in the green room. These guys get the guests. Nobody listens to me, so I just count on them to get.
Well, because of the Hugo's thing, I've met several writers, so I know several writers that are not like A-list writers, but they're fairly, Benny Hugo nominated writers, things like that. So.
Okay, let me throw this out to you before we go, real quick.
I do not know Chuck Tingle, but I have laughed at the things he said.
He would be awesome to have on the show.
Is that a real? Is he running up Chris Matthews' leg?
Hugo nominee Chuck Tingle.
He's the guy who wrote Space Raptor Butt Invasion.
Oh, that sounds good. I'm in for that. Before I go, War Pig, real quick, I want to let you know, I was throwing out this. Remember how I said earlier I'm not a conspiracy theory guy, but I'm going to throw this one out there. In terms of getting guests like Mark and like Nick, I was fed a theory earlier, and I'm curious to see what your thoughts on this are. And Mark, you may not know this, but a couple of years ago, we had another show. I had another show with my wife, Kay Nelligan, Kay Nells on Twitter, called the DLC Show. It's where we originally met the Professor, and I think it's where we originally met Daddy Warpig. And that show was far more popular than this one. We actually had thousands of downloads on iTunes as a podcast. It was put out by a company called the 405 Radio Network, and one day, rather abruptly, he said he had a conflict and could no longer do shows. and all of our stuff was off the website rather quickly. And I just thought that I took him at his word, but recently someone has put it in my ear that it happened rather coincidentally to when I did the Vox Day interview, and that sufficient numbers of people hate Vox Day and complained until they felt pressured to not have the DLC show anymore, and some people say that's continues to be the reason I have trouble getting guests. So I like I said, I'm not a conspiracy guy, but does that sound like it could be true to you, Mr. Warpig?
There are a lot of people that hate Vox. A lot of people that hate him.
I wonder now if that's what got that, because it was a popular show. So I'm curious now if if that got maybe interviewing Vox Day. I don't know, Mark. I could have just killed your career. Who knows?
How could I mean, I can understand protesting the show, but I don't see how it would suspend an entire series that's doing well. That makes no sense to me.
Well, this guy, I think, had a day job, and I think 405 Media was his thing he did at night, and I think... I think he was getting... I think he might have gotten concerned. He had already gone through something. He had someone, I think, Politabunny was on there, and she caused a firestorm of some sort that got him in a little bit of trouble, I think, during his day job. So if we added to it... And, the Vox Day interview was pretty innocuous. I mean, we didn't even talk about anything controversial. We talked about science fiction and stuff, so I don't know. If anybody actually listened to the show, I have a suspicion they didn't. I think they probably just saw Vox's name and went nuts instead of actually listening to the show. So I wonder if that's true. I mean, we had Professor on. He could have killed the show for all I know. Maybe it was Professor.
Probably.
Did you wear your odd job hat? Because that would have done it. Well, anyway, and if I can get Mark back on, I will. We're going to drink grog. We're going to have a good time with that. But I really want to thank you, Mark. We took an hour and a half of your time, but it's been a great time.
All right. It was great.
I'll give a quick announcement while we're talking about guests.
Go ahead.
We, on the Geek Gab podcast, we're having a special episode on Friday. We're scheduled to have Razorfist on, so...
On Saturday?
On Friday.
On Friday, okay. I thought your show was Friday. And also, I should also mention, I told my buddy Ralph.
Our show usually is on Saturday. We're doing it on Friday because that's when Razorfist could do it.
Oh, okay then. I don't blame you. I'm glad you saved Adam Baldwin for your show, though, you jerk. I meant to plug Ralph. He's got a show coming up Saturday live from London, so there'll be that. And you know what? If I can work it out, I'll probably try and stream a Bacon Bits from Savannah, Georgia, because it's a beautiful place, and maybe I can set up a camera or something and do a little clever Bacon Bit show there, and maybe somebody will buy me a beer.
I had something else that you'll find. You'll love this. Downloads. We put our podcast up on SoundCloud, so now I can track exactly how many downloads we've got. Our Hugo cast got like 1,800 downloads now.
Wow, that's fantastic.
And our last cast, which I thought was a fun debate about Civil War, the Civil War movie, had like 14 the last time I checked after almost a week. I'm just like, what?
Yeah, we're so all over the place. I mean, we get like 50 listens on YouTube, and then one day Nick Cole got, I think, a couple of hundred, so I imagine Grums is going to get at least a couple of hundred, so I don't know. I should just turn these into a podcast. That's what I should do. I tried to. I'll have to get somebody more technical than me to do it. I'm a plebe Mac user, so.
Well, you can do both.
Yeah, I'm gonna make Professor do it. He's the technical guy around here.
I download mine with a download program, download it off of YouTube, and then just upload it to SoundCloud, and they send out everything you need for the podcast.
So does that go to iTunes also?
It isn't on the iTunes music store. You can't subscribe to the music store, but you can add it to iTunes, and it'll download it for your iPad, iPod, whatever.
Right. I got to see how to get it back in the because we were in the music store before, and that's when we were getting good guests and stuff. So, like you. All right. Well, anyway, thank you very much, Mark, for coming on. We will see everyone next week. Don't forget, listen to the Ralph Retort from London, and listen to us next week. I don't know who the guest is yet, but we will announce that when as soon as Daddy Warpig books someone for me. Thanks again.